What if the biggest challenges we face today were baked into the system 150 years ago? To see it, you have to hold two Americas in your mind at the same time. First, a family farm in 1870. The rhythm is set by the sun and the seasons. Work is hard, but it's human scaled. You know the people around you, you know the land. Your world is the distance you can walk or ride in a day. Time feels cyclical. Planting, harvest, winter, spring. Now, shift the scene. A Pittsburgh steel mill. Night shift. The air is thick with smoke and heat. The rhythm here is set by the steam whistle. Work is measured in output per hour. The world is measured in railroad timetables and tonnage. This is the moment. America's heartbeat changes. We didn't just build new machines, we started to think like machines. Our sense of time, of ambition, of what a human life is for, all of it began to be rewired. America became a factory nation. And that raises a question we still haven't really answered. What kind of life does a machine build? Act 1. The new nervous system. To understand the Gilded Age, you have to start with a shock. For almost all of human history, distance was a law of nature. If something was far away, it was far away. Information moved at the speed of a horse. Then, almost overnight, America decided distance was not a law, it was a problem to be solved with steel. By 1890, the United States had laid down over 164,000 miles of railroad track. Try to picture that, a steel grid thrown over a continent. A new nervous system for a new kind of national body. This wasn't just about moving people or hauling grain, it was about changing what felt possible. If you could get yourself and your products anywhere on that grid, you were no longer trapped by where you were born. In the West, speculators and city planners laid out towns with streets more than 100 feet wide, not for the wagons they had, but for the traffic they imagined. They were planning for a future that didn't exist yet. But this new nervous system needed a skeleton, and that skeleton was steel. Act 2. Carnegie and the Price of Steel. Enter Andrew Carnegie. Carnegie understood something instinctively. In his world, capitalism was the art of turning luxuries into necessities. And his luxury turned necessity was steel. Carnegie didn't just want to make steel, he wanted to crush its cost so completely that it became the default material of the modern world. So he attacked every part of the process. New furnaces, vertical integration, obsessive tracking of unit costs. The result was staggering. In a single generation, the price of a ton of steel rails collapsed from around $160 to about $17. From $160 to $17. That number is the sound of the old world breaking. Suddenly, you could lay rails everywhere. You could throw bridges over canyons. You could begin to think about buildings reaching not 3 stories, but 10, and then 20. Carnegie's steel became the skeleton of an entirely new America. But every skeleton needs organs. Rails and beams are useless without something flowing through them, which brings us to the second great change. Act 3. Closing the frontier. For a century, the American imagination had pointed in one direction, west. The frontier was more than a place. It was a belief that if life became cramped or unjust, you could always go, find land, start again. In 1890, the Census Bureau released a quiet report. The frontier was gone. There were no longer big open spaces with fewer than 2 people per square mile. On paper, the map was full. That simple statement.
Frontier closed was like a psychological earthquake. The old answer to pressure,
Move farther out, was no longer available. But railroads and steel had created a different kind of space. Not horizontal, but vertical. If you couldn't go outward, you went upward, into skyscrapers, into bigger factories, into corporations. That stacked ownership and power, layer on layer on layer. The national ambition shifted from land to scale, from expansion to concentration. You can feel that shift most clearly in the cities. Act 4, Monster Cities and Human Fuel. The railroads were the arteries. The factories were the beating organs. But they all needed one thing, human fuel. So the people came from farms in the countryside. From Ireland and Italy, Germany and Scandinavia, soon from Eastern Europe and beyond, cities like Chicago became laboratories of speed. In the 1830s, Chicago was a tiny settlement, only a few hundred people. By 1890, it held around 800,000. From a village to a monster city in a single lifetime. Streets were laid out in grids, factories rose alongside stockyards and rail hubs. Neighborhoods formed based on language and origin, Polish districts, Bohemian quarters, Little Italies. The city became a machine made out of people. Inside this machine, life felt different. Time was cut into shifts, day shift, night shift. Income depended not on the harvest, but on the number of hours your body could endure. Children became part of the system too, not as future farmers, but as cheap labor, small enough to crawl under machines or into narrow shafts. The rewards of this system were real. Wages, though low, offered cash, not just crops, shops, theaters, streetcars. All the energy of a great city made some people feel. The future was finally here, but there was a cost. Because if America was becoming a machine, someone had to own the controls. Act 5, the privatization of power. In the older America, power had been scattered. Farmers, small merchants, local banks. Influence was local, personal, often face-to-face. In the new America, power began to gather in fewer and fewer hands. The railroads themselves became empires. Whoever controlled the major lines controlled prices, controlled which towns would live and which would die. Steel, oil, finance, all began to organize into combinations that could set terms rather than accept them. Wealth didn't just mean comfort, it meant leverage, the ability to call a senator, to pressure a judge, to bail out a government in a crisis. By the end of the 19th century, a strange reversal had taken shape. The United States still called itself a democracy, but more and more, its day-to-day reality was being decided in private offices, boardrooms, and bankers' studies. The nation had mastered distance. It had turned steel and steam into breathtaking growth. It had pulled millions into its cities and wired them into a single economy. But in doing so, it had quietly moved power upward, out of sight, away from the people who actually fed the machine. And that is where this first part ends. With a country that has gained enormous capacity, but also a growing tension. Who is this machine for? Who benefits? When a few private hands hold the levers of a factory nation? In part 2, we'll follow the men who sat in those private offices, the robber barons, the trust builders, the financiers who rewired America, and the first Americans who tried to push back.